There will always be people who misunderstand your kindness, test your patience, or treat your boundaries as if they do not matter. The mistake is believing that you have to fight every battle, explain your worth, or convince someone to respect you. Real strength is quieter than that. When someone disrespects you, your goal is not to control their behavior. Your goal is to control your response. You decide what you tolerate, where you place your attention, and when you walk away. In this video, we will explore 5 powerful ways to deal with people who don't respect you without losing your peace, your dignity, or yourself. When someone does not respect you, one of the biggest mistakes you can make is trying desperately to prove your worth. You may feel the need to explain yourself, defend your decisions, justify your intentions, or convince that person that you deserve better treatment. But the moment you begin seeking your value through someone else's approval, you give them control over your emotional state. Your worth was never created by another person's opinion. It existed before they noticed you, and it remains even when they misunderstand you. Not everyone will recognize your character. Some people will judge you based on their own insecurity, expectations, or limited understanding. Others may only respect you when you stop giving them unlimited access to your time and energy. You cannot control how someone sees you, but you can control whether their perception becomes your reality. Instead of constantly explaining yourself, focus on becoming comfortable with who you are. Know your principles, know your boundaries, know what you stand for. When you are clear about yourself, you no longer feel the need to defend every decision. This does not mean you should never communicate. Healthy communication matters. But there is a difference between explaining yourself once and repeatedly trying to convince someone who has already decided not to understand you. Sometimes silence is not weakness, it is self-respect. Let your consistency speak louder than your arguments. Let your actions reveal your character. Continue doing what is right even when nobody applauds you. You do not need to chase recognition from people who are committed to overlooking your value. Remember, proving yourself can become an endless cycle. Today you prove your intentions. Tomorrow you prove your loyalty. The next day you prove your abilities. And if you keep living according to someone else's judgment, you may eventually forget to live according to your own values. Real confidence begins when you stop asking everyone else to confirm what you already know about yourself. You don't need everyone to respect you. You need to respect yourself enough to stop accepting treatment that contradicts your standards. Walk with quiet confidence. Speak when necessary. Stay calm when challenged. And most importantly, never reduce yourself just to make someone else comfortable with your existence. Respect is not something you have to demand through anger, intimidation, or endless arguments. Real respect begins with the way you treat yourself. When you know what you will and will not accept, you become much clearer about the boundaries you need to create. A boundary is not about controlling another person. You cannot control how someone speaks, thinks, or behaves. A boundary simply communicates what you are willing to participate in and what you will do when that line is crossed. For example, if someone constantly interrupts you, insults you, or speaks to you aggressively, you don't have to respond with the same behavior. You can calmly say, "I'm willing to talk, but not while we're disrespecting each other." Then, give the person the opportunity to change their behavior. The important part is consistency. If you establish a boundary but repeatedly ignore your own boundary, people learn that your words have no real consequence. You may say, "Don't speak to me like that," but if the disrespect continues and you remain in the same conversation for hours, your message becomes unclear. A boundary becomes powerful when your actions support your words. Sometimes that means ending a conversation. Sometimes it means stepping away for a while. Sometimes it means reducing how much access someone has to your personal life. And in certain situations, it may mean walking away from the relationship entirely. None of this requires hatred. You can establish a boundary without wishing someone harm. You can distance yourself without becoming bitter. You can say no without feeling guilty. Remember that saying no does not make you selfish. Protecting your peace does not make you difficult. Refusing to tolerate disrespect does not make you arrogant. You are simply recognizing that your time, energy, attention, and emotional well-being have value. The goal is not to make everyone obey your boundaries. The goal is to make your own behavior consistent with your standards. When you stop tolerating what repeatedly drains you, something changes inside you. You become calmer because you no longer spend your energy fighting the same battles. You realize that you don't need to raise your voice to be taken seriously. You need clarity. Know your limit. Communicate it calmly. Follow through consistently. And if someone repeatedly chooses to cross that line, let your distance communicate what your words no longer need to explain. One of the hardest things to learn when dealing with disrespectful people is how to remain calm when everything inside you wants to react. When someone insults you, provokes you, or deliberately pushes your buttons, your first instinct may be to respond immediately. You may want to defend yourself, raise your voice, or give them the same attitude they are giving you. But reacting emotionally often gives the other person exactly what they wanted: control over your state of mind. You don't have to match someone's anger to prove that you are strong. In fact, real strength is often demonstrated through restraint. When you can pause before responding, you create space between what happened and what you choose to do about it. That small pause can change everything. Take a breath, relax your body. Listen carefully. Ask yourself, is this situation worth my energy? And will I be proud of the way I respond tomorrow? Not every comment deserves an answer. Not every insult deserves a defense. Not every person deserves access to your emotions. Sometimes people provoke others simply because they want a reaction. They want to see you become frustrated because it gives them a sense of power. If you remain calm, you remove that reward. This does not mean becoming passive. Being calm does not mean allowing people to walk over you. You can be firm without being aggressive. You can say what needs to be said without turning the situation into a battle. Your voice can remain steady while your boundaries remain strong. There is also a deeper reason for refusing to match negative energy. Every time you react impulsively, you train your mind to respond automatically. But every time you pause and choose your response consciously, you strengthen your emotional discipline. Eventually, you begin to realize that peace is more valuable than winning an argument. You don't need to prove that you are stronger by becoming louder. You prove your strength by remaining centered when someone else is losing control. Let people reveal themselves through their behavior. You don't need to expose them, punish them, or compete with them. Stay grounded. If the conversation becomes unhealthy, step away. If someone continues provoking you, create distance. If necessary, end the interaction completely. Your greatest power is not controlling other people's behavior. It is refusing to let their behavior control you. Some people will only understand your boundaries when they experience the consequences of crossing them. You can explain yourself repeatedly, ask for better treatment, and clearly communicate what you will not tolerate, but if nothing changes afterward, your words eventually lose their meaning. This is why boundaries must be supported by action. Imagine telling someone, "I don't appreciate being spoken to that way," and they continue doing it. If you keep returning to the same conversation, accepting the same behavior, and hoping they will suddenly change, you may find yourself trapped in a cycle of frustration. The problem is not that you failed to explain yourself clearly enough. Sometimes the other person simply understands your boundary but chooses to ignore it. At that point, repeating yourself is unnecessary. Instead, allow your actions to communicate your standards. You might end the conversation when disrespect begins. You might stop responding immediately to unnecessary messages. You might reduce the amount of personal information you share. You might spend less time around someone who consistently drains your energy. These are not acts of revenge. They are natural consequences of behavior. A consequence should never be about hurting someone. It should be about protecting yourself. When you stop giving unlimited access to people who repeatedly disrespect you, you teach yourself something important. Your boundaries matter. You also stop getting caught in the exhausting habit of giving endless warnings. You don't need to say, "This is the last time," over and over again. If someone repeatedly shows you that they are unwilling to respect your limits, believe their actions. People often communicate through behavior more clearly than through words. This does not mean you should immediately cut everyone out of your life over one mistake. Everyone can have a bad day. Everyone can make a mistake. The important thing is whether the person recognizes the problem, takes responsibility, and makes an effort to change. Look for patterns, not isolated moments. If disrespect becomes a pattern, your response should become clearer. Sometimes the strongest consequence is simply reducing access to you. You don't need to announce it dramatically. You don't need to create conflict. You can quietly step back and redirect your attention toward people and environments that support your peace. Remember, you are not responsible for teaching every person how to behave. You are responsible for deciding what you will continue to participate in. Let your actions match your standards. When your boundaries become consistent, your life becomes quieter, clearer, and more peaceful. There comes a moment when you have to recognize that walking away can be more powerful than continuing to fight for someone's respect. Many people stay in unhealthy situations because they believe that if they explain themselves one more time, give one more chance, or prove their intentions more clearly, the other person will finally change. But sometimes the problem is not a lack of explanation. The problem is a lack of willingness from the other person. You cannot force someone to respect you. You cannot force someone to understand your value. You cannot make someone treat you with kindness simply because you have treated them well. At some point, you have to stop trying to control their behavior and start controlling your own access to the situation. Walking away does not mean you are weak. It does not mean you lost the argument. It does not mean the other person was right. It simply means you have decided that your peace is more important than proving a point. There are moments when silence is healthier than another conversation. There are relationships where distance is healthier than constant conflict. And there are situations where leaving is the clearest boundary you can create. This does not mean you should walk away from every disagreement. Healthy relationships require communication, patience, forgiveness, and understanding. The key is recognizing the difference between an occasional mistake and a repeated pattern of disrespect. Someone who makes a mistake, takes responsibility, and genuinely tries to change deserves a different response from someone who repeatedly hurts you, dismisses your feelings, and expects you to tolerate it. Pay attention to patterns. If every conversation becomes an argument, if your boundaries are repeatedly ignored, or if you constantly feel emotionally exhausted after interacting with someone, it may be time to create distance. You don't need to leave with anger. You don't need revenge. You don't need to make a dramatic announcement. Sometimes you can simply step back, give less access, speak less, stop explaining, protect your attention, focus on your own life. The beautiful thing about walking away is that you create space for something healthier. You begin to realize that peace does not require everyone to understand you. It requires you to understand yourself. You know what you deserve. You know what you will no longer tolerate. And you know when staying costs more than leaving. Walking away is not always giving up. Sometimes it is the moment you finally choose yourself. The ultimate goal is not to spend your entire life worrying about whether other people respect you. The deeper goal is to become so grounded in yourself that someone else's opinion no longer has the power to control your peace. When you build a strong relationship with yourself, disrespect may still be unpleasant, but it no longer determines your identity or your emotional state. Start by keeping the promises you make to yourself. If you say you will improve a skill, work on it. If you decide to become more disciplined, take small steps every day. If you know you need distance from something that constantly drains you, have the courage to create that distance. Every time you follow through for yourself, you build self-trust. Self-respect is developed through action. You don't need to become perfect. You simply need to become consistent. Your confidence grows when you see yourself doing difficult things, keeping your standards, and choosing what is right even when nobody is watching. This also means becoming careful about where you place your attention. Not every opinion deserves your consideration. Not every criticism deserves a response. Not every person deserves unlimited access to your time and energy. Ask yourself, does this person help me grow, or do they constantly pull me away from the person I want to become? Your environment matters. The people around you influence what you begin to accept as normal. When you spend more time with people who communicate honestly, respect boundaries, and encourage growth, you begin to recognize that healthy relationships do not require constant tension. At the same time, don't make your self-worth dependent on receiving perfect treatment from everyone. People will disappoint you. People will misunderstand you. Some people will criticize you even when you are doing your best. That is part of life. The goal is not to create a world where nobody can hurt or disappoint you. The goal is to become strong enough that difficult interactions do not destroy your sense of self. When you respect yourself, you stop chasing approval. You stop begging people to understand you. You stop changing your personality simply to be accepted. You become more comfortable saying no. You become more comfortable being alone. You become more comfortable walking away from situations that compromise your peace. And slowly, something changes. You stop asking, how can I make them respect me? Instead, you begin asking, how can I continue respecting myself? That question puts your power back where it belongs. Build yourself quietly. Strengthen your character. Protect your peace. Keep growing. When your inner foundation becomes strong, other people's disrespect may still speak, but it no longer defines you.